7 minutes. That's the flight time of an Emad-class ballistic missile launched from southern Iran to the coast of Qatar. 7 minutes from ignition to impact. 7 minutes to decide whether 2.8 million people lose access to drinking water. March 14th, 2026, 21:47 local time, Persian Gulf. 2 infrared signatures bloom across the satellite feed at CENTCOM's Combined Air Operations Center. Launch point: IRGC Aerospace Force positions in Fars Province, 38 kilometers northeast of Lar. Trajectory: south-southwest, toward Qatar. The officer on watch doesn't hesitate. He keys the circuit to USS Gerald R. Ford's Combat Information Center. The words are simple. The implications are not. Vampire, vampire, vampire. 2 ballistic tracks, bearing 195. Estimate impact: Doha metropolitan area. The largest warship ever built has 7 minutes to stop a humanitarian catastrophe. I'm your host at Navy Battlefront, where we break down the most critical naval operations shaping global power. Today, we're reconstructing the night that nearly turned Qatar into a country without water, and the impossible decision that one air defense commander had to make with less than 200 seconds on the clock. To understand why those 2 missiles launched on the night of March 14th, you have to go back 6 days, to March 8th, 2026. The night the United States struck Bandar Abbas. The operation was called Trident Flare, after months of escalating tensions following the collapse of back-channel negotiations between Washington and Tehran in late 2025. IRGC fast attack boats had been harassing commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz with increasing aggression. On February 27th, an IRGC Boghammer fired a burst of 14.5mm rounds across the bow of the MV Coral Harmony, a Liberian-flagged LNG tanker carrying Qatari gas to South Korea. The round struck the bridge superstructure. 2 Filipino crew members were injured. President Trump gave Iran 72 hours to publicly disavow the attack. Tehran responded by calling the incident a routine maritime inspection and deploying 3 additional Hudong-class missile boats to the strait. On March 8th, at 2:15 local time, 12 F/A-18E Super Hornets launched from USS Gerald R. Ford, operating in the Gulf of Oman, southeast of Muscat. Simultaneously, USS Normandy, the Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser serving as Ford's air defense commander, fired 9 Tomahawk Block V cruise missiles. The targets: IRGC naval installations at Bandar Abbas, including the fast attack boat pens, a coastal radar station, and a command and control bunker associated with IRGC Navy's 1st Naval District. The strikes were precise. Satellite imagery released by the Pentagon showed the boat pens reduced to rubble. At least 4 Boghammer fast attack craft were destroyed at their moorings. The coastal radar station ceased transmitting at 2:23. Sources familiar with the battle damage assessment confirmed 17 IRGC personnel were killed. Tehran's public response was measured. Foreign Minister Araghchi called the strikes an act of war that will not go unanswered. The Supreme National Security Council convened in emergency session. The private response was different. Within 48 hours of Trident Flare, CENTCOM Signals Intelligence began intercepting a surge of encrypted communications across IRGC Aerospace Force networks. NSA's regional collection platform at Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the very facility housing CENTCOM's forward headquarters, detected a 340% increase in signal traffic originating from known IRGC missile command nodes in Fars, Isfahan, and Kerman provinces. Something was being planned, but the intelligence picture was fragmented. Here's why. IRGC Aerospace Force had been practicing a communications security protocol that American analysts later designated Pattern Cypress. Instead of routing launch authorization through their standard command network, which NSA had penetrated years earlier, they shifted to a hybrid system. Orders were transmitted in short, pre-coded bursts over a VHF frequency band, normally used by Iranian civil aviation. The messages were brief, 2 to 4 seconds, buried in legitimate air traffic control chatter. NSA's automated filters, tuned to identify military communication signatures, classified most of these transmissions as civilian. The fragments that were flagged for human review sat in a queue at Fort Meade for 36 hours before an analyst recognized the encoding pattern. By then, it was March 12th. That day, a telegram channel affiliated with the IRGC's propaganda apparatus published a message that sent shockwaves through Gulf capitals. The message was 10 words in Farsi. Translated, "Those who host the enemy will share the enemy's thirst." Thirst, not destruction, not fire. Thirst. The intelligence community understood immediately. Qatar produces 99% of its freshwater through desalination. The country has 2 major complexes, Ras Abu Fontas, on the southeastern coast south of Doha, and Al Hul, 5 kilometers to its south. Together, they produce approximately 1.7 million cubic meters of desalinated water per day. Qatar's strategic freshwater reserves, stored in above-ground tanks and a limited underground reservoir at Radat Rashid, can sustain the population for roughly 48 to 72 hours without desalination output. Strike those 2 plants, and 2.8 million people begin running out of drinking water in 2 days. Hospitals lose the ability to function. Cooling systems fail in a country where summer temperatures reach 50 degrees Celsius. The economic heart of the Gulf, the world's largest LNG exporter, becomes uninhabitable within a week. No missile needs to carry a nuclear warhead to create a catastrophe. Sometimes, the most devastating weapon is geometry. Qatar's geometry is catastrophic. A small peninsula, with its entire population dependent on 2 coastal facilities within 15 kilometers of each other, located 230 kilometers across open water from Iranian launch positions. March 13th, the day before the launch, CENTCOM Commander General Michael Kurilla held a secure video conference with the Joint Chiefs. According to sources familiar with the briefing, Kurilla laid out 3 scenarios. First, Iran retaliates with a direct strike on U.S. military assets in the Gulf, Al-Udeid, the 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, or the Ford carrier strike group itself. Second, Iran targets Gulf state civilian infrastructure, desalination, oil terminals, or power grids, to punish nations hosting American forces. Third, Iran conducts a large-scale attack on Israel, reprising the pattern from 2024. Kurilla assessed the second scenario as the most likely. His reasoning: a direct attack on U.S. forces would trigger an overwhelming American military response, which Iran wanted to avoid. An attack on Israel would be intercepted by the Arrow and David's sling systems, as it had been before. But an attack on Gulf civilian infrastructure, specifically Qatari desalination, would create maximum political pressure on Gulf states to demand American withdrawal, without directly engaging U.S. forces. The general requested immediate reinforcement of the Gulf's ballistic missile defense posture. The Ford strike group, positioned in the Gulf of Oman, moved west through the Strait of Hormuz. By the evening of March 13th, Ford was operating in the central Persian Gulf, approximately 180 nautical miles southeast of Doha. USS Normandy took up station 40 nautical miles closer to Qatar's coast, optimizing its SPY-1D radar for the ballistic missile defense mission. The Arleigh Burke-class destroyer USS Lassen, equipped with the latest Aegis Baseline 9C2 software update, positioned itself 60 nautical miles northeast of Normandy, creating an overlapping engagement zone. A second destroyer, USS Mitchell, held station in the southern Gulf, covering Bahrain. 4 ships, 174 vertical launch cells loaded with a mix of SM-3 Block IIA, SM-6, and SM-2 missiles. This was America's shield over Qatar. But here's what no one in the chain of command fully appreciated that night. The shield had a gap. SM-3 Block IIA, the primary ballistic missile defense interceptor, is designed for mid-course interception. It engages targets in the exoatmosphere, above 100 kilometers altitude, during the coast phase of a ballistic trajectory. The missile's kill vehicle uses infrared sensors to track and collide with the incoming warhead at closing speeds, exceeding 10 kilometers per second. The engagement window depends on geometry, launch distance, trajectory arc, interceptor positioning. For a medium-range ballistic missile launched from southern Iran at a target in Qatar, a distance of roughly 600 to 700 kilometers, the mid-course phase is compressed. The missile reaches apogee quickly. The window for SM-3 engagement can shrink to as little as 90 seconds. If the SM-3 misses, the backup is SM-6 in terminal defense mode. But SM-6 was designed primarily as an anti-aircraft and anti-ship missile. Its terminal ballistic missile defense capability is limited to slower, shorter-range threats. Against a re-entering Emad warhead traveling at Mach 8, the probability of intercept drops sharply. There is no third chance. March 14, 2026. 21:43 local time. Lieutenant Commander Reyes, the tactical action officer aboard USS Normandy, is reviewing the radar picture on the SPY-1D display. The Gulf is busy tonight. Commercial air traffic. Kuwaiti F/A-18S on a training sortie. A UAE Air Force Globemaster transiting to Al Dhafra. Routine. 21:44. A flash traffic message from the National Security Agency arrives over the SCI circuit. Priority, critic. The message is 3 lines. NSA has intercepted a launch authorization order transmitted from an IRGC Aerospace Force command node in Isfahan to the 77th Missile Brigade in Fars Province. The order uses a pre-authenticated code sequence that NSA's pattern Cypress analysis has now associated with live-fire operations. Timestamp on the intercept: 14 minutes ago. Reyes picks up the tactical phone to Ford's CIC. Before he can speak, the SPY-1D screams. 2 tracks, emerging from ground clutter in southern Iran, accelerating through Mach 3, ballistic profile confirmed. 21:47. The clock starts. Normandy's Aegis system designates the tracks as Goblin 1 and Goblin 2. The computer classifies them as medium-range ballistic missiles based on acceleration profile and launch azimuth. Estimated warhead type: unitary high explosive, consistent with Emad-class. Estimated yield: 750 kilogram conventional warhead. An Emad warhead striking a desalination plant doesn't need to be nuclear. A 750 kilogram warhead detonating inside the reverse osmosis membrane halls at Ras Abu Fontas would shatter thousands of pressure vessels, rupture high-pressure feed lines, and likely ignite chemical storage tanks containing sodium hypochlorite and sulfuric acid used in water treatment. The facility would be offline for months, perhaps a year. Trajectory analysis takes 47 seconds. Goblin 1's predicted impact point: Ras Abu Fontas Desalination Complex. Confidence: 94%. Goblin 2's trajectory is still resolving. Initial projection: also Ras Abu Fontas. But the confidence is lower: 71%. The track shows a slight deviation that the algorithms haven't yet characterized. 21:48. Commander Williams, Normandy's commanding officer, has the tactical picture. He keys the net to Ford. Ford CIC, this is Normandy actual. 2 ballistic inbound. Classification: hostile. Recommend weapons free. SM-3 engagement. Request authorization. Ford's air defense commander, Captain Sarah Chen, is already watching. Under CENTCOM's standing rules of engagement, updated 36 hours earlier specifically for this contingency, she has pre-delegated authority to authorize ballistic missile defense engagements without requesting approval from higher command. The doctrine exists for exactly this reason. There is no time to call Washington. Normandy Ford, weapons free. Engage Goblin 1 and Goblin 2. Cleared hot. 21:49. 3 minutes since launch detection. Normandy's forward vertical launch system hatches blow open. 2 SM-3 Block IIA missiles erupt from their cells in a cascade of white smoke and orange flame. Each missile weighs 1,500 kilograms at launch. Each carries a kinetic kill vehicle, no explosive warhead, just a 23-kilogram tungsten alloy projectile designed to destroy its target through the sheer violence of collision. The first SM-3 arcs northeast, climbing at 45 degrees, accelerating through the atmosphere toward Goblin 1. The second follows 8 seconds later, tracking Goblin 2. 21:50. 4 minutes elapsed. Goblin 1 is passing through apogee at 147 kilometers altitude. It's in the exoatmosphere now, coasting, the warhead beginning to separate from the booster stage. The SM-3's third stage rocket motor ignites, pushing the kill vehicle above the atmosphere. Infrared sensors on the kill vehicle acquire the target, a hot point against the cold of space. The divert thrusters fire, making micro-corrections. Closing speed, 6.2 kilometers per second. 21:51. 5 minutes since detection. Impact. The SM-3 kill vehicle strikes Goblin 1's warhead at 110 kilometers altitude. The collision releases energy equivalent to a 10-ton truck hitting a wall at 600 miles per hour. The warhead disintegrates. Fragments scatter across a 40-kilometer debris field over the central Gulf, most burning up on re-entry. Normandy's CIC erupts. Goblin 1 splashed. But there is no time to celebrate. Because in the 74 seconds since the SM-3's launched, Goblin 2 has done something unexpected. Its trajectory has shifted. Not by much, a fraction of a degree. But at ballistic speeds, a fraction of a degree changes the impact point by dozens of kilometers. The updated trajectory propagates through Aegis. Normandy's fire control technician stares at the screen. Goblin 2 is no longer aimed at Ras Abu Fantas. Its new predicted impact point, Udeid Air Base, the largest American military installation in the Middle East, home to CENTCOM's Combined Air Operations Center, housing over 10,000 U.S. military personnel, the nerve center of every American air operation in the Gulf region. 21:51 and 40 seconds. Captain Chen's blood runs cold. The SM-3 Block IIA tracking Goblin 2 is still climbing, still in its boost phase, still following the original trajectory prediction for Ras Abu Fantas. The target has shifted. The kill vehicle's onboard sensors have limited field of regard. It can correct for small deviations, not for a target that has maneuvered to a different impact zone. The SM-3 will miss. If you're watching this and want to know how a single missile's course correction created the worst 200 seconds in CENTCOM history, subscribe now and stay until the end. This is the moment where doctrine failed and instinct took over. 21:52. 6 minutes since detection. Less than 90 seconds to impact. Chen has to reallocate. She needs another interceptor, and she needs it now. But the geometry is brutal. Normandy has expended 2 SM-3 Block IIAs. She has 4 more in her vertical launch system. But the missile's flight time to engagement altitude is approximately 60 seconds. The window for mid-course intercept of Goblin 2 is closing. If she fires now, the SM-3 might reach engagement position in time. The probability, calculated by Aegis in real time, flashes on her screen. 34%. There is another option. USS Lassen, 60 nautical miles northeast, has SM-3s loaded and its Aegis system tracking Goblin 2. Lassen's geometry is actually better. The destroyer is closer to the revised trajectory. But Lassen's fire control system needs 22 seconds to generate a firing solution from cold. 22 seconds that don't exist. Chen makes her decision in 4 seconds. She gives 2 orders simultaneously. Normandy, fire SM-3, Goblin 2. Lassen, weapons free. Engage Goblin 2, SM-6 terminal. She's layering. Normandy fires the long shot. An SM-3 with a 34% chance of mid-course intercept. If it misses, Lassen will attempt a terminal phase intercept with SM-6 as the warhead screams back into the atmosphere. The problem with terminal intercept: the SM-6 has less than 15 seconds to acquire, track, and engage a warhead re-entering at Mach 8. The probability of kill in this scenario, according to classified modeling that sources later described, was estimated at 22%. Combined probability across both engagements, roughly 48%, a coin flip, for the lives of 10,000 Americans. 21:52 and 30 seconds. Normandy's third SM-3 launches. The deck shudders under the blast. Aboard USS Lassen, Commander Torres has his Aegis team working at maximum capacity. The SPY-1D radar is locked on Goblin 2. The SM-6 sits in its cell, warmed and ready. Torres watches the countdown. He needs Goblin 2 to re-enter the atmosphere, to come down into the SM-6's engagement envelope, before he can fire. The waiting's unbearable. Every second, Goblin 2 descends 1.8 kilometers. Every second, Udeid gets closer to receiving a 750-kilogram warhead. 21:53. Normandy's SM-3 reaches engagement altitude. The kill vehicle separates. Infrared sensors scan. They find the target, but the angle is wrong. The kill vehicle fires its divert thrusters, burning fuel at maximum rate, trying to correct. The closure geometry is marginal. The vehicle is approaching from the wrong quadrant, a consequence of the revised trajectory that Aegis didn't have time to fully optimize for. The kill vehicle passes within 12 meters of Goblin 2's warhead. 12 meters. In ballistic missile defense, that's a miss. SM-3 miss, Goblin 2, negative intercept. The words hang in CIC like a death sentence. 21:53 and 20 seconds, terminal phase. Goblin 2's warhead is re-entering, Mach 7.6 and accelerating. Altitude, 38 kilometers and falling. Lassen fires. An SM-6 Dual 1 erupts from the forward VLS. The missile has a blast fragmentation warhead. Unlike the SM-3's kinetic kill vehicle, the SM-6 doesn't need a direct hit. It needs to get close enough to shred the target with tungsten fragments. The SM-6 climbs at a near vertical angle, racing upward to meet the descending warhead. Its active radar seeker acquires Goblin 2 at 19 kilometers altitude. The missile adjusts course, closing speed, combined 3.8 kilometers per second, 21:53 and 47 seconds, detonation. The SM-6's warhead explodes 6 meters from Goblin 2. A cloud of tungsten fragments expands at 2,000 meters per second, shredding the Iranian warhead's casing, disrupting its structural integrity. The warhead doesn't disintegrate cleanly. It breaks into 3 major fragments and a cloud of smaller debris. The largest fragment, estimated at 200 kilograms, continues on a ballistic path, tumbling now, aerodynamically unstable. Its impact point shifts north. It strikes the desert 4.7 kilometers northwest of Udeid's perimeter fence. The impact creates a crater 8 meters wide and 3 meters deep in the sand. The concussion is felt on base. Windows in the Combined Air Operations Center rattle. No casualties, no structural damage. At 21:54, 7 minutes and 7 seconds after initial detection, it's over. Except it isn't, because what happened in the next 72 hours nearly dragged the United States into an unlimited war with Iran. At 22:15, 21 minutes after the intercept, CENTCOM transmitted a flash report to the National Military Command Center at the Pentagon. The report reached the Situation Room within minutes. President Trump was briefed at 22:30 local, 14:30 Washington time. According to 3 sources familiar with the briefing, the president's reaction was immediate and visceral. Trump demanded options for a retaliatory strike within the hour. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz presented 3 response packages that CENTCOM had pre-positioned in anticipation of Iranian escalation. Option Alpha, a proportional strike on the IRGC Aerospace Force launch site in Fars Province that had fired the missiles. 12 Tomahawk cruise missiles, limited, contained. The Pentagon's recommendation. Option Bravo, an expanded strike targeting IRGC missile infrastructure across 3 provinces, Fars, Isfahan, and Kerman. 48 Tomahawks plus manned aircraft strikes from Ford's Air Wing. Significant, escalatory, but still within the bounds of conventional military response. Option Charlie, a strategic strike on Iran's South Pars gas field in the Persian Gulf, the largest natural gas reserve on Earth, producing roughly 14 billion cubic meters of gas per year, accounting for nearly 40% of Iran's total gas output and a critical source of government revenue. Sources described Option Charlie as economic decapitation. A sustained strike on South Pars, which would require B-2 bombers, carrier-based aircraft, and submarine-launched cruise missiles, would collapse Iran's energy exports, cripple its economy, and likely trigger a broader regional war. Trump, according to these sources, initially gravitated toward Option Charlie. He reportedly said, and this aligns with his public statements, that if Iran targeted Qatari water, he would massively blow up something they care about. South Pars was that something. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth cautioned against Option Charlie. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs General C.Q. Brown laid out the military requirements. A South Pars strike would consume approximately 180 cruise missiles from naval and submarine platforms, would require 48 to 72 hours of sustained air operations, and would likely trigger Iranian mining of the Strait of Hormuz, shutting down 21% of global oil transit. The debate lasted 4 hours. At 2 o'clock Washington time, 10 o'clock p.m. local in the Gulf on March 15th, Trump authorized a modified Option Bravo. Expanded strikes on IRGC Aerospace Force infrastructure, plus the specific launch site in Fars. The South Pars option remained, in the president's words, on the table and ready to go if Iran struck again. Operation Trident Flare 2 commenced at 400 hours Gulf time on March 15th. 32 Tomahawk Block V cruise missiles launched from Normandy and Lassen. 16 Fa-18E Super Hornets from Ford struck IRGC facilities in Fars and Isfahan. The 77th Missile Brigade's garrison, the unit that had launched the Emad missiles, was effectively destroyed. Satellite imagery confirmed the obliteration of 12 TEL vehicles, 2 command bunkers, and 3 ammunition storage facilities. Iran did not respond militarily. Not immediately, but the consequences radiated outward in ways that no strike package could address. Qatar was furious, not at Iran, at the United States. Here's the calculation that Doha was making. Iran had fired 2 missiles at Qatar, specifically because Qatar hosts Udeid Air Base. The second missile had actually been aimed at Udeid, not at the desalination plants. Qatar's water infrastructure had been threatened, its population endangered, because of the American military presence on its soil. On March 16th, Qatari Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani summoned the U.S. ambassador. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. According to diplomatic sources, the emir demanded 3 things. First, an immediate and permanent deployment of a dedicated Patriot PAC 3 battery to defend the Ras Abu Fantas and al-Hul desalination complexes. Second, a formal security guarantee that the United States would defend Qatari civilian infrastructure with the same priority as U.S. military installations. Third, and this was the demand that sent shockwaves through the Pentagon, a timeline for restructuring the American military footprint at Al-Udeid. The Emir didn't use the word withdrawal. He didn't have to. The word restructuring carried the message. If American presence made Qatar a target, Qatar would reconsider the terms of that presence. This was not an idle threat. Qatar had leverage. Al-Udeid is irreplaceable. There is no other facility in the region that can replicate its combined air operations center, its 15,000-foot runway, its pre-positioned munitions storage, its housing for 10,000 personnel. Losing Al-Udeid would be the most significant American basing setback in the Middle East since the withdrawal from Saudi Arabia's Prince Sultan Air Base in 2003. CENTCOM deployed 2 Patriot PAS-3 batteries to Qatar within 96 hours, one at Ras Abu Fontas, one at Al-Udeid. The deployment came from the U.S. Army's 108th Air Defense Artillery Brigade, pulled from positions in Kuwait. Kuwait, in turn, quietly protested that its own air defenses were being thinned to cover Qatar. This is the cascading logic of deterrence failure. One successful threat, even one that was intercepted, reshuffles the entire regional security architecture. Now, the open questions, the ones that still don't have answers. The first question: how did Goblin 2 execute a mid-course trajectory correction? Standard Emad missiles are not maneuverable after the boost phase. The Emad's re-entry vehicle uses a basic guidance system, inertial navigation with possible GPS updating, but it doesn't have the ability to make significant trajectory changes in mid-course. Yet Goblin 2 shifted its impact point by approximately 35 kilometers during the coast phase. Defense Intelligence Agency analysts assessed 2 possibilities. First, the missile wasn't a standard Emad. It was a modified variant with a maneuverable re-entry vehicle, a capability Iran has claimed in state media but had never demonstrated in combat. If true, this represents a significant advancement in Iranian missile technology, one that degrades the effectiveness of SM-3 mid-course Intercept. The second possibility, the trajectory shift, was an artifact of Goblin 2's original targeting. The missile was always aimed at Al-Udeid. The initial trajectory analysis, conducted under extreme time pressure with limited data points, miscalculated the aim point. The apparent mid-course correction was simply the tracking solution converging on the actual target. The DIA assessment remains classified. Both possibilities are troubling. If Iran has maneuverable re-entry vehicles, the U.S. missile defense architecture in the Gulf needs fundamental revision. If Aegis misidentified the target under combat conditions, the same error could recur, and next time, the SM-3 might be aimed at the wrong intercept point from the start. The second question: the NSA delay. The Pattern Cypress communications, the launch authorization intercepted 14 minutes before the missiles flew, should have provided enough warning to raise alert levels across the Gulf. But the intercept sat in a processing queue because the automated filters misclassified the transmission. Had a human analyst been reviewing IRGC communications in real time, CENTCOM would have had an additional 14 minutes of warning. Normandy might have had pre-computed firing solutions. The engagement probability would have been significantly higher. The NSA Inspector General opened a review of the Pattern Cypress failure on March 17th. Sources familiar with the review say it has already identified systemic issues with the automated filtering protocols. Specifically, the assumption that civil aviation frequencies are inherently low priority. The IRGC exploited exactly that assumption. The third question, and perhaps the most consequential: what happens next time? Iran now knows several things it didn't know before March 14th. It knows the SM-3's engagement timeline against a Fars province launch. It knows the approximate positioning of Aegis ships in the Gulf during a crisis. It knows that a mid-course trajectory deviation, whether intentional or not, can defeat the first layer of defense and force reliance on the lower probability SM-6 terminal intercept. And it knows that Qatar's desalination infrastructure is the single most effective pressure point in the Gulf, not because destroying it would win a war, but because threatening it fractures the alliance between Gulf states and Washington. Comment Intercept if you think the Navy's layered defense worked as designed, or if you think a 48% combined intercept probability against a target protecting 10,000 Americans is an unacceptable gap. The Pentagon announced on March 18th that 2 additional Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, USS John Finn and USS Ralph Johnson, would deploy to the Gulf, bringing the total number of Aegis-capable ships in the theater to 6. The THAAD battery at Al-Udeid, which had been operating in a limited configuration due to maintenance on one of its launchers, was restored to full operational capability. These are Band-Aids. The structural problem remains. Qatar is a small country with concentrated, irreplaceable civilian infrastructure, located within medium-range ballistic missile reach of a hostile state. No amount of Aegis ships can change that geometry. The flight time is too short. The margin for error is too thin. The consequences of a single intercept failure are too catastrophic. After-action assessments circulated within CENTCOM in the days following the intercept painted a grim picture. If Iran had launched 4 missiles instead of 2, a salvo well within the 77th Missile Brigade's capacity, the engagement math collapses. Aegis can handle 2 simultaneous ballistic tracks. 4 simultaneous tracks with divergent trajectories would saturate the mid-course defense layer. Terminal intercept would become the primary engagement, and terminal intercept against Emad-class warheads at Mach 8 has a per-shot probability of kill below 25%. The assessment concluded with a single sentence that sources described as the most alarming line in any CENTCOM document since the fall of Kabul. The sentence read, "A coordinated 4-missile salvo against Qatari desalination infrastructure, launched from dispersed IRGC positions, has a greater than 60% probability of delivering at least 1 warhead to target under current defensive posture." 60% probability that 1 gets through. 1 is enough. There is a moment in every military crisis where technology stops mattering and human judgment takes over. On the night of March 14th, that moment came at 21:52, when Captain Sarah Chen made a 4-second decision to fire an SM-3 she knew would probably miss, and an SM-6 she knew had barely better odds. She layered 2 low-probability shots because the alternative was 0 shots. She chose a coin flip over certainty of failure. The SM-6 from Lassen worked. The warhead fragmented. The largest piece hit empty desert. Nobody died. But 4.7 kilometers is not a margin of safety. It's a margin of luck. And luck is not a defense strategy. Subscribe if you want to stay informed about how the Gulf's most critical vulnerabilities are being contested in real time. This is Navy Battlefront. We don't simplify the threat. We explain it. The Persian Gulf is 240 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. On one side, Iran, a nation with over 3,000 ballistic missiles, a proven willingness to use them, and an intelligence apparatus that has spent decades mapping every critical node in every Gulf state. On the other side, 6 small nations whose modern economies depend entirely on infrastructure that was never designed to survive a war. Desalination plants, LNG terminals, oil refineries, ports. Every one of them is a fixed target with a known GPS coordinate. The night of March 14th proved that the United States can intercept Iranian missiles over the Gulf. It also proved that interception is not guaranteed, that the margin is razor-thin, and that even a successful defense comes at a political cost that may ultimately do more damage than the missiles themselves. Qatar hasn't expelled the Americans from Al-Udeid, not yet. But the relationship has changed. The unspoken agreement that Gulf states would host American forces and America would protect Gulf states now carries an asterisk. The asterisk reads, "Protection is not absolute." and the threat of harm can be as